Appreciation Month happy hour. Hopefully, we can get back to in-person happy hours sometime soon. I don't know about you guys, but for me, it's a Glenlivet kind of a day. And because I'm in my office, out of a red Solo cup. So hopefully you guys are joining me. If you have any questions, the chat option is open, so feel free to chime in at any time. At first, I'd like to introduce, she doesn't need much of an introduction, but the immediate past president for the MMBBA and the current chairperson for the membership committee, Colleen Palmer.
Thank you, sir. We're going to try to keep this brief because we know people have busy lives. Even though it's COVID, we do have things to do. So, and it's frankly gorgeous outside. So if you got to step outside today, that was a nice change of pace for what we've been seeing for the past months. Let's just talk a little bit briefly about how we came up with Broker Appreciation Month, what we're doing here to encourage brokers to become more involved with the membership of the association rather. And then I'll pass it on to two of our current broker members, and then we'll let Dennis get on with he's the star of the show, so we'll let him get on. But we came up with membership, a Broker Appreciation Month, because when I came from the broker side, which was the Mortgage Association of Maryland Association of Mortgage Professionals, which was basically the old Mortgage Brokers Association, we encompassed different people other than brokers, but it was just, appraisal and other affiliate members of the industry. But it was kind of like where they felt like it was home for them. And when we were in a position where both associations were kind of struggling, it became necessary to have the conversations, which we'd had over the years, but to join both. All right. So we did that in 2016. I was part of that committee for merging both of those. And the brokers, I think, have struggled with coming on board to this because, it's like anything. I think they felt like because we merged with them, it should not have been that way, but I think it was felt that way. So that was never the intention. In fact, quite frankly, if we're being full disclosure, the Brokers Association gave a pretty good influx of income to the now MMBBA to keep it going. So it was definitely a joint decision for both associations to come together and collide. And I believe since the industry, we have licensed MLOs through both facets of the business. It's not just a broker or a banker association for events, for education, for social. And we all should pretty much be breaking bread together because we're all in this together to, combat anything that comes our way, which is why we have Dennis on the call today to kind of just tell you a little about what we do as an association to support your efforts in, delivering loans for your borrowers, having less obstacles to overcome to deliver those loans, and just getting the production where you want it to be with our help, education-wise, socializing, which I think Brendan will speak a little bit about, which I think is important. I know my industry partners are other wholesale reps, which are on here, and I think they can attest that I reach out to them and ask them to come on here, be a part of these things. Don't be afraid of your competition, and don't think you know it all because you can learn from your competition. And I love them all dearly, all of you on there. I see your faces. And I think all of us should champion each other. And I think that would be great. So I'm really encouraging you guys that have broker relationships, or if you are a broker and you're on this today, please be a part of this. We need your voice. I don't think the brokers know as much of the bankers what we actually do. And that's why we're having this today. So the Dennis can kind of explain to you what he does for our association, and you can get maybe a little bit more educated on why we need your involvement and your membership. Frankly, I'm not going to beat around the bush. We need your membership and your dollars and your support so that we can continue to fight for you when bills come up, legislation comes up, education needs are there, so that we can advocate on your behalf and be the association that you need for both the brokers and the bankers. So that's my pitch. We have tackled some pretty good bills over the years. One in specific I'm not going to talk about because I think Brendan will probably speak on that. And I think that's probably the biggest one in a long time. So I'm going to leave that thunder for him. And we'll just go with that. We were actually going to start with Sean Williams. Sean is a broker and a member, which we're very happy about. Sean's a relatively newer member, a couple of years, but I kind of dragged him in to be just more than a member, and he's now on our board. He's very active. He's an amazing narrator. So we're utilizing him a lot for social Zooms and things of that nature because he's really good at that. Very people person, very commitment to the community, very much committed to the community and the borrowers. And he is president of Fortis Mortgage in College Park, Maryland. He's a great guy, and I'm going to let him kind of go with telling you a little bit about why he's involved with MMBBA, and we'll leave it to you, Sean.
Oh, thank you, Colleen. I really appreciate it. So before I get started speaking, I wanted to thank the Maryland Mortgage Bankers and Brokers Association just for the opportunity to speak. It's always great to be able to share information, and I thank everybody for what they do, and thank everybody for joining today. The only thing, Colleen, that I'll want to correct you on is I've been a member, a silent assassin though. Since like almost 2011.
Really?
So,
okay.
Yeah. So I was always a member, and so that's when you ask why I joined. Back in 2011, when I got into leadership and really started like running branches and stuff like that, my first opportunity was in Maryland, and they're like, well, basically you have to join this association, like it's the place you got to be. And so the first thing for me is fear of missing out. Like that's the biggest thing. Is like everyone's saying this is the place to be. There are folks here that you need to meet, and things that you need to understand. And so 2011, when I was working, for other companies, I joined. But yes, fairly new, like as far as being as active as I have since 2018, because that's when we started the mortgage brokerage. And so number two was the impact on legislation. I didn't realize how much of an opportunity we had with the Maryland Mortgage Bankers and Brokers Association to get in front of decision makers that are making these laws, and and we would have advocates and lobbyists and things like that. I didn't really understand that until I participated in the legislative day when we went to Annapolis. I forget what year it was. It might have been like 2014 or 2015 or something like that, and just that was really eye-opening to get access to see how that works. Since then, I found out about some of the legislation that's been passed to be able to protect me and my colleagues as a broker. And Brendan, I know it's impacted him tremendously. He was a part of it, and he's obviously going to speak to it, because I don't want to speak to it because it's impacted him more because I haven't been in the business as long. So that was number two. And then number three, it's really for me the people. We talk about masterminding and networking, and so Colleen, the reason that you may have seen me really start to get pretty active is because once
let's go. We got to go back to your house.
I realized all these things and understood who the people were and the players in the organization, what type of impact they had. I knew I had to get involved to help the company. And so just real quick, Colleen, I met you through the association as I started to get a lot more active, as opposed to just showing up for the events and eating crabs and having a drink or Christmas parties and stuff like that. And we actually got a chance to start doing business. Like, honestly, I knew of Caliber Home Loans. Everybody knows of Caliber, but I didn't realize that they were wholesale. I just, always saw them on our rate sheets or, best execution or whatever it might be on the retail space. And I just really didn't know they were on the wholesale side. So started to talk to you more. There are other people that I've met through the organization that are AEs and wholesale reps also. But a quick story through that is I remember Colleen calling you up one day, like, Colleen, my Virginia audit examination went amazing. My DC examination went amazing. But Colleen, Maryland, I don't know. I said, I don't know about this one. I'm having some issues. Well, Sean, what are you going through? And it was nothing like major. It was really scary because I had compliance team, but they're, out of state. They don't have relationships, aren't really familiar with Maryland and such. And so you started to ask me more questions. You connected me with an attorney that's friendly with our organization. That's a part of the organization, Steve Lovejoy and his team. And because of that, they were able to really make my life like great, because it's scary going through some of these things and you're wondering and thinking the worst. And it kind of takes you off track. So when I got an opportunity to get connected with them, it really helped me to continue to flourish in the business, not really worry about anything. And they were influential, and they had some local representation, and everything that they did was specific to the mortgage and banking industry. And it's just nice to know that you have access to people like that. And so that is like a big win that I've seen so far, like as in regards to being a broker, just access, like I said, to the people, and access to these relationships and resources that we didn't know that existed. And so that's my story. And I'm gonna continue, like just getting the help from Lovejoy and his team. That's worth the dues that I've paid probably for several years. Let's just put it that way. So it's been great.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, you were a little beside yourself when you called me. So we're glad we got you in with the right people. And
I thought it was really unfair the way that I was being treated.
They always find something. Don't forget that. Always find something. But it's important. I've even gotten information from my other brokers that allow me, with their permission, to share with other brokers with regard to quality control procedures, that if they have an audit, it's just not good enough and they want something a little bit better. And I've been able to share those from other brokers. So, that's again talking about what the community itself can lend for you at some of these events and sharing with others. So, okay. So without further ado, thank you, Sean, so much for being here.
No worries.
We're going to have Brendan speak. Brendan McKay is part of McKay Mortgage, owner and extraordinaire senior loan officer with his mother, Tina, who I believe is on here. I saw Tina. There she is. Hi, Tina. Tina, long timer in the industry. Most of us know Tina because she's been around probably.
And prior mortgage broker president.
Yep, there you go. Exactly. Yep. Prior president. Yep. So she has been around for a long time and a good friend for many, many years. I kind of grabbed Brendan, who also is a client, and dragged him onto the board as well as a mentee, but he also is super smart, very involved, very knowledgeable, and he got on the legislative committee and has since now become a board of governors. So he's on the board. He's still on the legislative committee. He's a bright individual. He's one of the top producers in Maryland. So he's done a ton of business, and we're going to let him speak a little bit to the big secret bill that we, kind of helped out the industry for. So Brendan, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Colleen. I'm Brendan McKay, co-owner of McKay Mortgage Company, and as I'm known at every MMBBA event, Tina McKay's son, which I'm super proud of, first and foremost. But Colleen, a lot of what you said earlier really resonated with me. And I would like, when you're talking about brokers being hesitant to join, that was us. That was me. I was like, oh, it's just a bunch of bankers. And the brokers are, kind of an afterthought in the group. And the story I'm going to tell you is evidence it's 100% not true. And it's why I joined. Because we switched to broker in April of 2017. And in between then and the bill that we've all been referencing, Dave Roberts, who's a longtime local rep, since retired, that probably most of the people on this call know, informed me that there was legislation in process to reverse a rule that a lot of Maryland brokers, frankly, did not even know existed. They were constantly in violation of it. And like many rules that people are violating, they didn't know it was a rule until the auditors start changing the way that they're enforcing it. Which Sean can testify to too. So there used to be a rule where Maryland brokers, this was only applicable to brokers, not to banks and not to lenders, but you could not refinance the same client or you could not do business essentially with the same client on the same property twice in a 24-year period. If you did it the second time, you essentially had to do it at no profit whatsoever. So if you help someone buy a house and they're super happy with your services, and then rates drop 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, anytime within the next 2 years, you couldn't profitably refinance that client. You'd either have to do it for free or send them elsewhere. And it's pretty obvious how unfair that is and that it's complete BS, especially for the fact that it wasn't a universal bill, universal law. It only applied to brokers exclusively. And it was an old law that was completely antiquated and pretty irrelevant. So Dave told me about it, and I got fired up, and I emailed, and I wasn't even a member of MMBA at this point. And I emailed, local legislators and who was sponsoring it. And next thing you know, I'm testifying and I wasn't sure what the hell to expect. And I show up in Annapolis and then it's Colleen and a bunch of bankers from the MMBBA testifying for a broker related bill alongside with me. And like, I was just blown away. I will tell you, it's probably pretty obvious what happened afterwards, but like, it showed a ton to me that an association that I thought was heavily banker focused was out there in force. I mean, there were 6 or 7 people from the association testifying on this bill. And it went really, really well and it got passed. And I found out the whole story afterwards that they had been lobbying for this for a while. And that, we showed up and testified. And I honestly showed up there thinking that we had no chance from everything I had been told by people that knew about that kind of stuff. And then I found out afterwards, it was basically already a done deal. That us showing up to testify, which I was completely terrified of and was, but yeah, I was like, oh, I can do this. And then the microphone goes on. I'm like, oh God, I don't know if I can do this, but yeah, the bill passed. And at the time, this was February, the 3-year anniversary was actually on Tuesday of this bill. And at the time, the interest rate environment in 2018 was, things were high, relative, trending upwards, and it wasn't really relevant to my business whatsoever. We weren't doing a ton of refinances, which is really what that law was preventing. But as everybody knows, things changed pretty quickly thereafter. And I actually went back through my books, or I say me, John Laux, who was on the call. He went back through our books and identified every Maryland transaction for a repeat client in a 24-month period since that bill passed, and it was 93 loans for over 39 million in volume. So like, needless to say, that the MMBBA and their push in getting that passed, it was extremely financially life-changing financially beneficial for me, and probably for all the other brokers on this call, even if they didn't know it because they were violating it beforehand. If it wasn't for the MMBBA, you were going to find out, because your next Maryland audit would have gone extremely badly if that didn't get changed. So like, those numbers and whatever, every broker on this call can kind of ballpark how many transactions they've done in Maryland for repeat clients, and it's a really, really big number. And compared to the $395 a year that we pay in dues, it's like, it's the best rate of return on your money. It's not possible to outweigh that. So anyway, since we went and testified, and even before it got passed, I knew like, all right, this is something I should be a part of. They really do have the brokers back. And so I joined. Aside from that, the happy hours when we're meeting in person is really fun. There's only so much, my wife wants to hear me talk about mortgages. So I need to find somebody to talk to about it. And get it out of my system, and the meetings and happy hours and committee meetings and stuff like that are a really good time. And like, I care about our industry, and like, if you care about your industry and want to have a voice in how things are going to change, and who knows what the next bill we're going to have to be back is, and this is a place to do it. So yeah, I really appreciate it. And like, I know I see a lot of account reps on here, like all of my account reps. So if you guys are talking to any of your brokers about joining and you need me to bully them into doing it, I will be more than happy to. Just let me know. But yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And next, the most important person on the call, Dennis Rasmussen, who is the MMBBA's lobbyist. He was a former state delegate. And I'm reading this from his Wikipedia page, so that means he's a big deal. But yeah, he leads, our legislative calls. I'm constantly impressed every time that he speaks, and he's completely on the ball. And I haven't been doing legislative stuff long enough, but I can't imagine someone more tapped in to what's going on in Annapolis than him. So yeah, thank you for being here, Dennis.
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate the opportunity. It's been many years that I've been representing the mortgage banking industry. In one form or another. Now that it's also the bankers and brokers, but I guess Colleen, it's been about 20 some years, I think, that I've been representing you. And of course, In my former capacity as an elected official, I spent 16 years in office and was a member of the House, but also a member of the Senate of Maryland, and I chaired the Senate Finance Committee for a number of years, and in that capacity dealt with banking issues and mortgage banking issues. So it's an industry that I feel like I have a pretty good working knowledge of. Then I was county executive here in Baltimore County. And when I left office, I started a lobbying firm. We're headquartered here in Maryland. I'm a lifelong Marylander, but we provide advocacy services in 15 states. So we're in most of the states east of the Mississippi. So it's always an exciting time. All the legislatures around the country really operate and function under totally different rules and procedures and policies. Some meet year round, some meet twice a year, some meet every other year. Others have 30, 40, or 90-day sessions, like we do here in Maryland, 90 days. So it's a really varied environment, and it can cause some challenges, nothing compared to what we're doing this year with the virus. Most of our legislative activity is virtual. They do allow some in-person meetings in Annapolis, providing the person you want to meet with is comfortable meeting with you. Lobbyists are generally not prohibited on the State House campus, but there are some people that, as former members, we have a different registration, and we can get on the campus when we need to speak to legislators. We're halfway through the session. It's been an active session considering the fact that everybody's meeting virtually. They do meet in the State House periodically for the first 4 or 5 weeks of this session, but only on a really formal basis to introduce legislation. They have met to also vote. The state constitution requires that you must be in the State House to vote. So that's been a challenge for them. For those of you that have been to Annapolis and familiar with the configuration in both chambers, the House and the Senate, it would be much different today if you looked in there. Every Senate desk has a plexiglass cubicle around it. So they're all kind of, sitting in these plastic cubicles. On the House side, they've actually divided the House in half. 50% of the members are on the floor. The other 50% are in what they're calling the State House Annex, which is really the House of Delegates office building. I think there might be a little legal issue there, but they've called it the Annex, and that's where they are. And I think the Attorney General may have blessed that as being in compliance with the Constitution. So, we have, I've been involved with government for many years. My father and uncle were both office holders, and as a kid, I listened to public policy at my household for many, many, many years. And I enjoy what I do, and I very much appreciate the trust and confidence that your membership has given me over the years. I was going to take just a few minutes and talk about, what we do mechanically to be sure that we are where we need to be on legislation and the legislative process. So there's an old adage that most legislators will tell you if you ask, the importance of lobbying, the importance of being an advocate and knowing what's going on in the legislative process, where the government has the capacity to change your business and your lives in a very short period of time. And oftentimes I'm amazed by business executives who really don't have a sense of the legislative process and fail to realize how the legislature and the executive branch can have a huge impact on their life. So I always tell my clients, it's really important to be at the table, because if you're not, you're on the menu. And I think that's a truism that you should just keep close to your heart, because it's actually what happens. And you really need to be involved in this process. So what I do for the association is, as the session starts, in past years, we've have done some seminars where new members, we've kind of gotten together, taken a couple hours actually, and gone through and tried to explain, how government's organized, different levels of government, the General Assembly, how it functions, how it operates, how it goes about doing its business. So as we talk about the legislative process, there's a point of reference for you where you can understand what we're saying and why we're saying it. So when the session starts, bills are they up to 55 days. Legislators can introduce legislation. So every day there's a report that comes out. It's called a synopsis. I take that report, go through it, try to identify any issue that I think would be of interest to your membership. And whether it's issues that are very broad, can have a significant impact, or whether they're kind of issues on the fringes that can maybe impact some of your members more than others, I try to identify any issue that I think might have some remote interest to your members. We do that. We produce a report. My office, Dennis Parkinson here in my office, former state budget director, he goes through with me. We identify issues and what they are. He prepares a report that we send out to your membership. You all have seen those reports, and they identify, all those bills, bill numbers. We have a direct link from the bill to the legislation itself so that you can read it. Part of the seminar is we try to give you some tips on how to read legislation to be sure they're getting the right interpretation. Has a short title of the bill, tells you when the hearings are scheduled, gives you a status, and then it indicates what would be the position of the MMBBA on those bills. We can decide that it should get a favorable report, meaning we support. We can give a favorable report with amendments, meaning we kind of like the bill, but we think some things need to be clarified or changed. Or we oppose the bill, an unfavorable report, or we're just going to monitor to see what happens. Because sometimes bills come in, they're drafted in such a way that we may feel we're not really interested, it doesn't impact us. And all of a sudden it gets amended in committee, and now it's a whole different bill that has an impact. So have to be very careful to be sure that on a continued basis, we monitor what's going on with all these bills. So your legislative committee really plays a critical role in that. As much as I feel like I have a working knowledge of your business, I am not in your business, and I don't know the business as well as you know it. So I have to rely on your recommendations and expertise as to what some of these bills do and how they really can impact you and your line of work. So we have a scheduled legislative committee conference call. Now it's a Zoom call these days, but that or a conference call. And you have the report that we've sent out to you in advance. And you've hopefully had a chance to look through some of this legislation. And then we have a robust discussion about each bill, what it does, how can it impact us, not impact us, what kind of position we want to take on that legislation. And deciding on what we do, it may mean that we want to testify, we may want to submit just written testimony. We may want to have witnesses testify on that bill. We may want to do both. We may want to have someone testify and provide written testimony. We may want to draft amendments and offer amendments. All that gets discussed in the legislative committee. And most importantly, and it's interesting to hear Brandon and his assessment of going to Annapolis, I think it's critically important that when you testify in front of committees, it's actual members of the association, not me. They see me all the time. My job is to work the back room. My job is to work the hallways. I meet with legislators individually. That's my job, to be sure that I take whatever our position is and try to be sure that message gets to the appropriate legislators. what's really effective is for them to hear you. It's your business. You can relate exactly to whatever the issue may be, and you have the technical expertise to respond to questions. So as a matter of practice for years with all my clients, I try to, as much as possible, get them to testify themselves. So it's important that your membership stays involved in that part of the process. In past years, that responsibility kind of gets shared. Everybody kind of steps up depending on what the bill may be. They come to Annapolis. For the newbies, you know, we'll spend some time and be sure you're comfortable going up to testify and so forth. You know, legislators are just like all of us. They get up every day and go to work. There's nothing special there. And, you know, you can testify and we can review your testimony with you, be sure you're comfortable in doing what you can do. So that process, I think has been very successful. I think it's been effective. It allows us to be sure that anything that may be impacting our business, that we're engaged in that issue and we're going to do what we can to be sure that whatever impact it has, it's a positive impact. So it's been a good process that's worked well. This year, I mean, generally in a 90-day session, we'll have anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 bills introduced in a 90-day session. For the mortgage bankers and brokers, that averages out to about 40 to 60 pieces of legislation a year that have some impact on your business. You know, we're active. We do what we have to do. In the past, we didn't do it this year, but in the past, we've had committee dinners where, you know, we invite the committees, the legislative committees that we're in front of the most. Generally, it's the Finance Committee in the Senate, which is the committee that I chaired for years. And then on the House side, it's Economic Matters. Sometimes we have legislation in two other committees, Judicial Proceedings, or believe it or not, Environmental and Transportation. You would say, why that committee? But they do handle some of the affordable housing issues and community development issues, which we sometimes get caught up in with some issues. But we'll meet with, we have those dinners in Annapolis. We always get good attendance. We always get at least half the committee, generally more, that come over, have dinner. We can spend 2.5 hours with committee members individually. We have people from the association come down. It's a good mix. We end up with 20, 30 people at a dinner, and we're able to build relationships. And when it comes to the legislative process, relationships are just critical. You know, it's much easier when you've developed the confidence of a legislator or credibility, they trust, they know you're giving them accurate information. They get a chance to talk to you. They like to build relationships. You know, all legislators want to be loved. So, you know, it's a really great opportunity to build relationships and the credibility of the organization. So this year we've had, you know, a number of issues that have dealt with lender licensing, state regulation, mortgage servicers, commercial law with credit worthiness issues. We had a big bill on that yesterday. Reverse mortgage. We've been trying to do some things with reverse mortgage, another pretty heavy lifter bill. So there's a lot going on, a lot of issues. And the more you all can stay involved and be supportive, not only in having a lobbyist and coming to Annapolis and doing all those things, but even with the efforts that the association makes with fundraising. You have a political action committee. It's important to make political contributions to legislators that have been supportive of your agenda over the years. You know, we generally support legislators that have shown that they've been supportive of us. And by that, I mean, they've been supportive of our issues. So we want to do what we can to keep, obviously, those people in office. And political fundraising is like really important to legislators. They don't like talking about it. They don't like fundraising. They all do it. They have to do it. They have to raise money. And in order to be able to get their message out when they're running for election. So the more you can do that, the more, again, that just helps build relationships. And we try to find, when they have their fundraisers, again, this year it's all virtual. But when they do have them, it's great to have members of the association go in person and attend, the fundraisers. And it's a chance to get to the bar and get some food and mingle a little bit, and then build a relationship with the legislator as well. So happy to answer any questions. That's a quick overview. One of the things I have learned over the many years is that you don't want to be the last speaker between dinner and a bar. So I'll stop there and I can answer any questions you may have.
There is a chat. If anybody has a question, if you want to put it in there, or, obviously, as long as it's not everybody talking for each other, if you have a question, you can just reach out.
Dennis, I have a question. Can you walk through the timeline where, because oftentimes I think we think, oh, the session starts and now we're going to tell you what we want from the session. But can you walk through the timeline of something that we want to get accomplished?
Right.
When it needs to be brought up, how it, before session begins, how you build up to that?
Right. Normally, when the session's over, the session generally runs for 90 days. It starts the second Wednesday in January, goes to 90 days. So we're adjourning the second Monday in April. There's about a 30-day period, 45-day period where the legislation is being evaluated by the governor. He will or she will decide which bills they may want to veto, kind of go through that process. Most legislation becomes effective in October 1st. Some legislation July 1st, so it's consistent with the state budget. But legislation can become effective whatever the bill says, whatever the legislation says, but they're generally the dates that are used. Emergency legislation becomes effective the day the governor signs the bill. So that's kind of your enactment dates. Preparing for the next session should start like right after that. I mean, if you want to be proactive with some legislation, the sooner you can start it, the better. You want to identify sponsors, begin to have conversations with sponsors about legislation. They will bring in what's called the Department of Legislative Services, where all the bill drafters are. I can't introduce legislation. You can't introduce legislation. Only legislators can. So we can draft bills. We can draft preliminary bills, but they all have to go to the Department of Legislative Services, where they will redraft them. They'll ask the Attorney General's office to review the bills to be sure they're legally sufficient. So all that takes time. You can pre-file legislation. So you would want to be in a position in early fall to have some legislation drafted, have it reviewed. The legislator will get what's called a jacket copy. So they'll get actually get the legislation, and at that point would share it with us as an association, and then we can be sure it's what we want, and then they can introduce the bill. And it's called pre-filed. It doesn't actually get filed until the session starts, but it gets a bill number and it's sitting there. So on the first day, second day, that bill would get introduced, that legislation. So you can never start too early in drafting legislation. So then once it gets into this, introduced into the General Assembly, it gets what's called first reader. It gets read across the desk, meaning the bill was introduced. The presiding officer, the president or the speaker, introduces that legislation or assigns that legislation to a standing committee. The standing committee then schedules hearings. They have a hearing. They'll have a voting session. Committee will decide what it wants to do with the bill. If they like the bill and it passes, it gets reported to the full membership in either chamber. The bill is presented to them. The chairman explained what the bill does. They have a debate. Everybody likes it. They adopt the report. It goes to third reader and final passage in that chamber. So if that was in the Senate, it would then go over to the House, and the House goes through the whole same process. So there are a lot of hearings that take place. Most committees will handle anywhere between 10 and 15 bills a day. So the more you can do in advance, the more you can talk to legislators even before the session starts. The last thing you want to be doing is starting to work on your bill on February 1st, and you're just now beginning to talk to legislators. You really want to talk to legislators in September, October, November, if you're going to be proactive. Sorry, that was a long answer to.
No, but it's important because oftentimes we say session has started and now can you do this for us? And we just have to make sure we keep that timeline in mind.
Exactly.
And it took many years to bring that one bill that Brendan was talking about. The timing has to be right? I mean,
if the bill is
climate.
It depends on the issue. It depends on the urgency of whatever's happening. But some years ago, you could depend on a bill, even if it was controversial, could be enacted in 1 year, one session. I've seen that change over the years. And now if it's a bill that's kind of controversial or far reaching or really making a policy change, it's a 2 or 3 year process sometimes. The first year they kind of hear you. Second year they pay a little bit more attention to it, a little bit more pressure, understand it better. Third year, maybe they'll understand it to a point where they can vote on it. Keep in mind that the General Assembly in Maryland is a part-time legislature. Everybody in there, for the most part, there are some full-time people that are legislators, full-time legislators, but for the most part, these are people that have other professions. And, they're deciding, they're trying to understand your business when it's not their business. And they're trying to understand it in a short period of time. So you have to give them some slack. And you'll find people that'll develop certain expertise. In the Finance Committee, for instance, the vice chairman is Senator Feldman, Brian Feldman. He understands your industry. He's a lawyer. He's a CPA. He's active in the business community. I mean, he has a pretty good understanding of your issue. There are other members that really do not. They're just not exposed to. Maybe they have a mortgage, and that's about it. So it's important to keep that in mind and to be sure that when we're trying to educate, we do it in a simplistic way or as simple as we can, and not inundate legislators with reams of material that oftentimes they're not going to read. They don't have the time to read it. They don't have the opportunity. And again, that's where I come in. I try to take that kind of information and put it into message bites that I think gets the message across without, inundating them with data.
Any other questions? Amanda, do we have anything in the chat?
No, we do not. Well,
I think we're good. All right. Well, thank you, Dennis, so much for being here today. We do have these Zooms. Dennis did mention the PAC committee, and we have an event in the fall, PAC to School, pun intended. And the guys that run that do a really good job. We also have a lot of fun. We, as a group, raised a phenomenal amount of money this year, or last year, I should say, in the fall. I ended up with 2 bikes that I had to charity mine off again because I felt guilty for one, but that's okay. But it's Ernie is our treasurer. We've got several guys that help us out with the PAC to School. So we do need those resources as well, like Dennis said, because we do need to give back to keep those people still playing in our field, you know, as we speak in the mortgage industry, and keep them on our not on our side per se, but understanding our industry and hopefully understanding what we kind of our thought process of why we want things, why we want to fight for certain bills or fight against certain bills. I do have Tim Goff and Rich Green, I believe, was also still on here. Do you gentlemen have anything? They're actually chair our legislative committee. Tim?
Hi, Colleen. Tim here. Just very briefly, Dennis, I think, undersold himself there with respect to understanding the process down in Annapolis that is paramount to being successful when lobbying. And the relationships that Dennis has really helped us kind of cut to the chase and be able to get our issues in front of the right people. And in most cases, they understand where we are at the end of the day. So Dennis, I appreciate all of your efforts there.
Thank you.
To give you an example of something that we're dealing with this session, there was a bill introduced where I'm not sure if it was Senate or House, I can't remember at the moment, where a legislator, the bill is asking or would require lenders to consider a prospective borrower's work and or school attendance as a reason for qualification for a mortgage. Now, that you all know, whether it's an FHA, a VA, a conventional or a rural development loan, that is not, there's no credit worthiness tied to school attendance or work attendance. But that's the kind of legislation that may come up that could have detrimental effects on all of us, whether you're a banker, broker, wholesale, or retail, that we have to look at each session. And that's a real life scenario. The good news is, it appears, the hearing was yesterday, and it appears that an amendment that was offered that we supported kind of wordsmith that in a way where we can live with it, and it's not something that's a requirement as a reason to qualify. Last thing I'll say is that Dennis touched on it. Monday afternoons at 4 o'clock during the session, we have a Zoom call. If you'd like to be exposed to it, you don't have to become a member of the legislative committee. Just email Amanda, and she'll send you the invite to that. You can sit on that call. It's about an hour typically, and you can hear some of the topics that we're dealing with and kind of get a feel for how this process works before, if you're thinking about jumping in. I know that when I started, it helped that I had witnessed some of those calls before I got involved with the legislative committee. So with that, I'll turn it back to Colleen.
Awesome. They do a great job with the legislative committee, but Brendan, myself, as we've both spoken, we both testified, and I'm not going to lie, Brendan said it, and I'm going to retweet that was insanely intense and scary, but I'm so glad I did it. And it was very gratifying to see us get kind of what we wanted, what we went down there for, and allowed me to realize that I just think of myself as one small little player in this industry, but you do have a voice, and we need people to go down there. And it can't just be me and Tim and Rich and Dennis every time, or Ernie, or, you know, whoever's on this call that participates in those. We need additional players to come in and advocate for not just the banker side, but the broker side, because majority of these things, that 24-month bill affected the broker industry or the broker side of the industry, but some of them are universal. It's across the board, you know, like the education thing. I'll make a play on that. If they were going to go back to your schooling, I ironically, just coincidentally, got my college transcripts the other day, and I called my dad to thank him for paying for the 4 years that I didn't really do much at all. So if that's a testimony to what you're going to transfer into in life, let's hope that's not, because I hope that I accomplish a lot more than what these pieces of paper say. But so those are kind of some ridiculous things that even come up, right? That if we weren't nose to the grindstone and picking these things up, and we didn't have Dennis there to say, hey, take a look at these, and Tim and Rich to read them prior to, and have the brokers and the bankers come to that Monday call and really draw awareness to these things, whether, like Dennis said, do we need to look at it? Do we need to watch it? Do we need to act on it? Do we need to testify? All of the above. So it's a testimony of what we do. And it's my humble opinion that the biggest thing that the association does for the members is what this committee and Dennis and the legislative group does, because without that, we would really be problematic with some of the things like Brendan talked about, that one bill that would have, been $39 million. He could not have done business. And frankly, let's take that another step and say, if he didn't do those loans for those customers that he built relationships with, potentially somebody else could. Not only could he not keep his customer, not only if he did do it, would he get potentially a bad audit and have repercussions from that, but he could get an early payoff on a loan. It's ridiculous. It just doesn't make any sense. So that's why we advocate for the industry and for our members. I'll end with one thing. And I mean, of course, I can't leave without saying this. We need you. If you're not a member, please be a member. I mean, we're offering from February, which is about to end, $100 off for brokers. An individual membership is $250 plus $100 off. Think about that. Like, that's insane. If you can't do that, I mean, I think it's important for you to invest in your industry. I just really think you can. We have small business membership, which is $395. That's 1 to 5 employees. And then we have entire organizations, which is $750, which can be as many members of your organization. In this industry, in this time, I think that's pennies on the dollar to give you security in the way you are able to go out and do your business on a daily basis, knowing that we're advocating for you. And secondly, if you want to be involved or you want to come to a board meeting just to see how this goes, you don't have to be a board member to be a part of this. This is not a coup. This is not a group that isn't inclusive. We're very exclusive. We want people to participate. Please come join the legislative call, a board meeting, contact myself, anybody here that you may know about what participating in a committee would be like. And certainly contact Amanda or any of us that whether it's another wholesale rep on here, an MI rep, whatever, if you would like to become a member. And all that information is on our website, which is mmbba.org. Should be pretty easy to find, but if you need any help with that, reach out to any of us. And I'm going to end on something fun before we say goodbye. And you can certainly continue your cocktails, but we'll do 2 things. If you have full business attire, please don't stand up if you don't, just in case. But if you have full business attire, we'd like to send you some swag. So if you are fully in business attire, raise your hand or stand up and I will jot your name down and we will send you an MMBBA swag grip. Ernie, I know Dennis is.
Sort of.
Oh, okay.
Well, I have no tie on today.
That's
What about sweatpants on under the?
That's not. I guess that is full business attire, right, Sean?
No, I mean like pants.
Nowadays, it's full business attire.
So that's all we have. Ernie,
I have dress pants on, but I have a blanket underneath too. So
that's okay. Yeah, that's full attire. We'll send you something. And then lastly, the last thing before we leave, if you joined me with an alcoholic beverage, raise your glass. Salud. Who is that? Amanda, Tina, Joe.
It's a lot.
Sorry, Scott, Frank. Who else did I get? Kim. I saw you, Kim.
Colleen, are you not going to mention Joe's COVID beard and look?
I really, if I'm being honest, I really wanted when he got on, I was going to go, Joe, but I didn't want to make a big spectacle of it. But looking good, friend. But thank you all very much for being on the Zoom call. Very much appreciated. I know I harassed some people that are on here probably because I sent a bazillion emails out myself, but I do think this is important. And after my presidency, during my presidency, my goal was to get more brokers to be involved. It's very hard to be the president of the association during a pandemic and pretty much do anything but that, especially when your director leaves, your executive director. So I had my hands full. We have Amanda now, and we're in very capable hands with her. She does a phenomenal job. And so now we're back to beating the pavement to try to get more member involvement. You know, it's not out of desperation, but the truth just be known. We're not having a conference for now 2 years in a row. It's been pushed off a little bit longer. We're not able to have in-person education meetings. The Zoom calls we do for free. We do pay Dennis, and he's worth every penny and then some, and we want to continue to pay him. And Amanda, so we do need your help. So please consider if you're not a member.
Colleen, I get credit now.
Okay, Crystal, you're in. I got you.
I got credit.
I'll follow up.
Amanda, do you have anything before we go?
Yep, I was gonna say, I'll follow up with everybody with the link for joining as well as the promo code. I put it in the chat. If you are a member, go to the groups and just join the legislative group. It doesn't mean that you have to be a part of the legislative group, but if you want to see those client update reports from Dennis, I post them there every Saturday. So you can just go in, you can click on them, and then all of the information for the call is on there as well. So if something strikes your fancy and you want to hop on the call, you can do that right from that group.
Awesome. And with that, I'll say have a great evening, enjoy, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thank you,
Thank
Amanda.
you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.